Everybody, welcome into the Sweat. It's good to have you here with us. My name is Adam Kaufman. We have got a lot to cover over the course of the next hour. Of course, we are going to get into the NBA Finals. Game 2 last night in San Francisco, not going the Celtics' way. Instead, obviously went to the three-time champion Warriors. And then, of course, NHL Conference Finals, MLB. We'll do some golf. We got a lot to cover, but let's bring in Julian Edlow, DK contributor, and of course, one of our great knowledgeable basketball minds to get into all things NBA Finals to start us off. Jules, good to see you, obviously. And look, third quarter, we were looking at it, was an absolute mess last night for Boston. That has not been an uncommon trend over the course of this postseason, regular season, or even past years for that matter. So tell me, what went wrong?
A lot of the same things that went wrong in game one. They just went worse and created a larger margin for the Warriors. And there's no way. I mean, that was a must-win game for the Warriors. Nobody goes down 2-0 at home in the NBA Finals. So after what happened in game one and after building that larger margin in the third quarter, Golden State was just going to run away with that one. So, I mean, from a Celtics standpoint, this team needs to be better prepared for the third quarter. Essentially with that game was pretty close to a repeat for about three quarters. The deficit just got so large that the fourth quarter, Udoka punted that game with 10 minutes left, started bringing the subs in.
The Luke Cornets of the world.
Yeah. So it got ugly quick. The Celtics are going to have to figure out whatever it is, putting an emphasis on the third quarter. And I think it'll help being at home. And I think it'll help that the Celtics have bounced back so strong after this. It brings you right back to the 22-2 third quarter in Miami. The Celtics won the next game by 25 points. I don't think they're going to win by 25 because Golden State's much more talented than Miami. But we know the stats with the Celtics. They should bounce back in this game 3. And it hasn't mattered for the Celtics or anybody when you get mocked these wide margins in the NBA playoffs. Like, it's another game. It's a new game, and these teams have been fine in the next game.
Yeah, there really hasn't been a lot of momentum game to game, series to series. You just look at it. Home court hasn't seemed to mean as much. And heck, the Celtics have been a better road team these playoffs than they have been at home anyway. They may want to just stay in San Fran. But, you were talking about it in terms of the bounce back. The Celtics, whether it's 5-0, 6-0, whatever the number, Celtics have not lost so far in the postseason in consecutive games. So obviously they're not a team that cowers away from the moment, but one of the big keys in that third quarter and getting outscored by 21, just in the game in general, as you well know, it's turnovers. Jason Tatum, among others, really highlighted that after the game. Celtics outscored by, I think it was 18 points in terms of points off turnovers. That was basically the game, Jules.
Yeah. All these games have been encapsulated in like these, whichever team goes on the massive run wins it. Now, Golden State did have a big run in the third quarter in game one, and then the Celtics had whatever it was, the 40-16 run or fourth quarter to close on. That's how these teams are winning. It's kind of just whoever has that best 7, 8, 10-minute span, whatever it is probably going to win the game. And you take teams like the Celtics and the Warriors, and it kind of enhances that because both teams can get so hot. Both teams can dig in defensively and get stops. And, either side can build themselves a 15-point edge over a 3-minute span, like a 18-3 or whatever it may be. And that team is usually going to win these games. So it's going to be really interesting. Like, we were talking in the Miami series, the Celtics won all these quarters, but, the series is tied. You have Draymond in game one saying we dominated 42 minutes, but we lost. Like, a lot of these games are coming down to who has the best 6-7 minute spurt, and it very well could go that way again for Boston, just like that game when they came back home. What was it, game 4, Miami? They just started the game off 22-2 or whatever it was, even more than that, and ran away with it. Like, these runs are going to be ridiculous in these games.
I saw a stat this morning just to really speak to the Celtics and turnovers. When the C's turned the ball over 16 times or more, and it was 19 last night, 0-5 in the playoffs. When it's 15 or less, or 15 or fewer, whatever the proper English, 13-2. So protect the ball, win more often than not if you're the Boston Celtics. But one guy that really gave them fits, and Jaylen Brown talked about a post-game saying that he was out there mucking it up. And of course, Draymond Green, he had his foot on Jaylen Brown's head at one point. What has Draymond meant to the success of this, very early on here in this series for the Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, he did what he had to do in game 2. You saw him get that jump ball on the first possession of the game with Al Horford, and he was physical the entire time after that. So was all that legal? I don't know. And we all watched the broadcast and hear them talk about, Draymond gets his first tech pretty much on purpose with Grant Williams. Like the courage or whatever word you wanna use for Draymond here that I'm not thinking of him to have a technical foul and be pushing guys around like that on the floor and just be like, yeah, no, that this will be fine. They're not gonna send me out of this game. Um, is wild. Like it's dumb on his part, but he gets away with it. So he's going to push things to the limit. He'll do it again in game three. He'll probably get another tee in game three, and the crowd will love that in Boston, and we'll see where it goes from there. But what the Celtics need to do, yes, it's limit the turnovers, and then it's just not complain. Don't worry about the refs. Udoka did that for them with his technical that he said he purposely got in game two. Don't worry about the refs in play, and they'll go on one of those runs like they did in game one and be in position to win game three. You mentioned the stat. They're 6-0 straight up and 6-0 against the spread coming off a loss in this postseason. So here's a try at number 7, and I'd like them to get it done.
Jordan Poole stepped up after a disappointing game one. Gary Payton II showed up after not being there for game one. Is there a player, be it one of those Warriors or somebody on the Celtics side, that's outperformed your expectations, be it last night or just in 2 games so far?
I think it's the help from the role players on the winning team in both games. Like it was Horford, White, and even Smart to a degree in game one that clearly played higher than their, expected average, and it led to a win. And then you have Jordan Poole hitting those ridiculous shots in the third quarter to kind of take what was a good run and make it a great run and put that game away. So it's been whatever team gets that boost from the role guys, almost regardless of what the stars do, because Tatum wasn't scoring in game one and the boost from the role players was still enough. Curry, probably better in game one than game two, but he got a boost from some of the role guys, even from Draymond, even though it wasn't necessarily through scoring in that game too. So it's been role players that have, exceeded the expectations. We know that the stars are gonna do what they do. So you probably like the Celtics role players to now bounce back after that poor game, especially coming home and have a good game. But the Warriors aren't afraid of playing on the road. Neither of these two teams are.
So maybe the answer here is a role player, but I'll defer to you. Who needs to step up in game 3?
Yeah, I think the easy answer, Al Horford, the Celtics 3 starters outside of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum had two,
right?
2.
Yeah,
Al Horford 2 points. Marcus Smart 2 points. Robert Williams 2 points. Maybe you don't get as much from Williams, who's clearly hurt, going to be a little limited, but he can be better than he was in game 2. But yeah, just get more from that starting 5 around Brown and Tatum, and you're going to be better. So those are the guys. Even though Derek White, took a step back, he had 12 points in game 2. That's a pretty average game for a Derek White, maybe even a little above average. So he's been fine. I think just the drop off from Horford and Smart, even with Tatum hitting all those shots in the first half, that needs to come back, and it should come back in a game 3 at home, especially we see Horford with the rest. We keep getting these rests in between games. He should be better.
Doesn't seem like there's been a whole lot of momentum game to game. I mentioned that earlier, and especially here in the finals when you've got like 3 weeks between games. The next one isn't until Wednesday. So I don't know. Does anyone have the momentum right now?
No, the momentum, like you said, momentum in home court exists less and less in these playoffs, particularly, with the Celtics. I would say the Warriors are pretty good at home. Their only loss was the game 1 to the Celtics. So they have, some of a home court advantage. The Celtics have a great crowd. They have a great building. They just haven't had much of a home court advantage so far. They haven't played well at home. I'm not sure why. We'll see if they can, change that around in this series. But momentum wise, yeah, between the time between games and all the blowouts we've seen in this postseason, it just kind of seems like almost forget momentum. Whoever has the bad game is the side you want to be for the next game. You make adjustments. Your percentages, your shots even out. Your guys that were bad aren't going to be as bad. So it's almost the opposite from when we used to talk about momentum in a series. Now you want to get kicked down and you're expected to get back up.
Before I let you go, just real quick, right now, DraftKings Sportsbook has the Celtics by 3.5 in game 3. What do you think of that number?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it would be 2.5, 3. Golden State's obviously, this is now, the series is a pick 'em. and there's 5 games left, and 3 are in Boston. So it's a home court 5-game series, and the Celtics have home court, and they're not favored. So it tells you that Golden State is a little bit better. The guys making the numbers at DK Sportsbook. That said, the spot, like the number didn't matter in game 2. It was going up from 3.5, 4, 4.5. It could touch 5 at some sports books, and it was just a Golden State spot, and the number didn't matter. I think game 3 could wind up being a Boston spot, and the number doesn't matter. It might move to 4. That's fine with me.
Julian Edlow, you're done for the day, my friend, or at least done with this program. You can get on with everything else that you need to do. We appreciate it. Probably talk to you again tomorrow, and we'll do a little golf talk on the other side. We got the RBC Canadian Open with a couple of our experts. So stay tuned here on The Sweat. What's up? Welcome back on The Sweat, and fresh off the Memorial Tournament. You can look at some of those results right there. What a day for Billy Horschel. Let's get into it here. RBC Canadian Open is on the way. It's a little chaser fade on The Sweat with DK contributor Jeff Ulrich, DK Nation's Colin Sherwin. Colin, I haven't seen you in a while, so it's great to have you back here with us. Billy Horschel, guys, you were just looking at it. Easy win Sunday afternoon. Wins by 4 strokes. What did you like here, Colin? Start us off from Horschel this weekend.
He didn't have the blow-up hole. Billy Horschel is just a very manic player. When he goes low, he goes very, very low and very, very quickly. He just never made a mistake. And as soon as he made that eagle on 15, it was over. Just sort of who he's been throughout his entire career. If he's locked in, he's as good as any player out there. Definitely a risk taker, but a guy who can go low at any time. And so coming into the last 2 majors of the year, he's somebody you probably should be paying attention to. I think at St. Andrews, though, his game fits St. Andrews a lot better than it will at Brookline.
Jeff, first question for you. Why didn't you dress up for the show?
I mean, my whole room is painted red. It's Canada Day every day here. Okay, Kaufman, so calm down. But yeah, Billy Horschel is interesting. I mean, like Colin's right. I mean, when his game is locked in, like he's an elite putter. His short game is as good as any veterans. You know, his driver is actually a lot better than some of the other veteran players like a Matt Kuchar or something that you'll see. And his approach game has been elite for a lot of the year. So he probably doesn't get as much credit as he should just as a player. And I completely agree with what Colin laid out there. Like, he's very live for the Open Championship. I think his game sets up really nice. Whether he'll have the patience, like the ability to stay patient at an Open where like bounces and like pop bunkers are viable, that might be something to be discussed. I don't think he's going to be quite long enough to compete at the U.S. Open, but he has definitely been locked in for a lot of the year. Like I mentioned, a guy who's like putting can really carry him, but when his approach game is up there as well, we saw today, like he can compete with the best in the world, or yesterday I should say, compete with the best in the world. So a much deserving win frustrating if you had tickets on guys like Cam Smith or Aaron Wise, which I
You
did.
just woke up watching all sorts of highlights. You've been on it all day. Proud of you. Obviously, we were talking about it. This tournament here is back in St. George's, back in Toronto for the first time for the PGA Tour in 3 years. So is there going to be some confusion here, Jeff? You know, these golfers having to go to Toronto north of the border, yards versus meters. Do we need to worry about having to explain how this all works?
Yes, Kaufman. No one's going to be able to shoot under par this week. The winning score is going to be like +10. No, all the golf courses in Canada are in yards, okay? It doesn't work like that. We're not like Europe. We use yardage here. It's the same deal, okay? There's no difference. Relax. Yes, St. George's, it's not Royal St. George's, St. George's Golf and Country Club. We haven't seen it since 2010, but it's a shorter course. It's barely over 7,000 yards. It's probably going to play a lot like the venue that we saw Hamilton Golf and Country Club in 2019, which was another short par 70, which got absolutely blitzed by Rory McIlroy that year. It's probably going to be a little bit trickier in setup, but look, here's what really all you need to know. Carl Peterson, who ranked 137th in driving distance in 2010, shot a 60 at St. George's in 2010 in the third round on his way to winning. Some of these guys are going to go super low. I would not be shocked if you saw 59 this week.
Colin, I mean, I think you're in Florida still, right? So like you might be closer to Toronto than Jeff is, but I'm just going to say this thing is in Jeff's backyard because he's in Canada and we're not.
It's literally like 2,000 miles away.
I know. It's not even close to you, but again, Canada. What do you think of this thing, Colin? What do you expect?
Well, as a fellow Canadian citizen with Jeff, but I have something that no other Canadian citizen has. This is called a Stanley Cup ring, and they don't get those up there in Canada anymore. So I have one of these, unlike every other Canadian.
That's the plastic replica one?
It is actually. I got it at the game. They gave them away. It was but they're like $100 on eBay now. I could have paid for my game ticket. So I agree. This is not a chip and putt course. This is an executive par 9. Okay. This is like ridiculously, this course is a joke. 7,014 yards. It's a par 70. I agree. 50. If you can find a prop this week for 59 and you can find it at under like 700, like plus 600, plus 700 somewhere, I'm in. Like this is these guys are going to torch this place. You're probably going to need 28 under or better to win this week. So, again, you're looking for guys who can just make birdies. Don't worry about others.
There's three par 5s on this course, even though it's a par 70. So it's a little bit of a quirky design. So I love the 59 call if we can find one, Colin. We'll have to double up on that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in. And if whatever you can get, 60, 61, whatever it is, somebody's going to go super, super low this week. So look for the guys who can shoot a lot of birdies, who can make a lot of numbers. Scotty Scheffler is one of those guys. Billy Horschel is one of those guys, but their odds just to win this week, I don't think are very good at all. But yeah, there's going to be some numbers fired out there for sure.
Guys, back in 2019, Rory McIlroy won this thing. It may feel like an eternity ago, but not too long ago, just a few years, obviously. And right now, he's at plus 800 on the DK Sportsbook. Colin, is he the play this week?
I like Rory as a fellow member of the Commonwealth and the Queen's Dominion. Plus 200 at top 5, though, I think might be a little bit number. He's a little too thin at plus 800 to win. Rory does have those, holes where he does take, sometimes a little bit of trouble. But if anyone can just attack this course, if somebody could shoot that 59, Rory McIlroy is probably the top of my list of guys who could actually go out and do it. But can he do it for 4 rounds? I'm not sure. I really like him, though, to finish top 5 this week, and especially if you can get top 5 in ties. Plus 200 at DK. I think that is a very, very strong play this week. I'll be on that. You a believer, Ulrich?
Look, Rory McIlroy has tended to do his best work at softer courses like this. I mean, he really does not mind courses where he can just get in a groove and get confident, and it's just like every shot is so easy, and that's probably what we're going to see this week. But yeah, I mean, like there's 5 of the world's top 10 in the event, and then you've got Rory at plus 800. It's not big enough. It's just unfortunately like it's taken outright on him. No, for DFS, yeah, sure, you could build around him, and like Colin said, I actually really don't hate the plus 200 on top 5 either. But it's really just like he's just not big enough in the odds. I mean, will I be shocked if Rory comes and wins again? Not really, but I don't want to take him on at this price. Not with Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler, and even guys like Fitzpatrick and Burns in the field as well. Burns is, by the way, plus 1800. Seems to be getting no respect still, even though he just won on a similar par 70 like 2 weeks ago. So
I sort of feel like, Jeff, you've already answered my next question, but let's go to it anyway. With Rory at plus 800, Scheffler, JT, both at plus 700, do you view this thing as a three-man tournament, or are people like Burns just not getting the respect?
Oh, no. Look, I mean, we could easily get a winner down the field this week. Whenever you get these shorter courses, one thing that happens is that, putting just gets amplified. I mentioned Carl Peterson. He was third in strokes gained putting that year. Again, we don't need to look at 2010 that much. The course is a little bit different, but it's not that much different. It's still a shorter par 70. So, you look down the field and, guys like Chris Kirk pop out, someone who can get really hot with the putter as well, really good around the greens. Patrick Reed is a player who's still at plus 6,500. We know he can putt. He's played a little bit better, but yeah, you can absolutely go down the board this week. I don't think you need to just be like, wow, Scheffler and Thomas are in the field. It's going to be one of them. If their putters just stay a little bit cold on these greens or they just don't figure it out, they'll be there, but they won't necessarily be making enough putts to stay up with someone who's gaining like 8 strokes on the field. So there's plenty of viable plays down the board. If you're going with someone like below 2,000, I would probably look at Fitzpatrick or Burns. Obviously, we don't love taking Matthew Fitzpatrick at plus 1,600, but this course is just gonna make it kind of like a putt fest, and Matthew Fitzpatrick probably is the most elite putter of the top 8.
Colin, you agree there's some guys that aren't getting the proper due right now?
Yeah, again, Jeff, my fellow Canadian, stole my thunder here. I love Patrick Reed at plus 6,500 this week. He's a guy who can really roll the rock, and that price is just too high. When he gets in a groove, he plays really well. Now, he's not exactly fun to root for. So if you're doing this for small money, like it's tough to get out there and cheer on Patrick Reed in like any capacity. But he can play. If you're trying to make some money, I think at plus 6,500, he's definitely the value this week. The other one is Harold Varner. I think he's a guy who does not get enough credit for his short game. He's a guy who is really striking the ball well. Yeah, a little bit of a letdown at the PGA, but I think he's got the game that he could be in contention this week. Again, another one of those guys that I really don't love it to win, but it's like a top 10 at plus 200. Somewhere in that range, I think he could have some value for sure.
I'll give you a somewhat wider range anyway. So somebody you're chasing, Colin, between, let's say, plus 2,500 and plus 6,000.
Yeah, that's a little bit tougher. That is a narrow field because then you have to either bet on Tony Finau or Sebastian Munoz or Keith Mitchell, Chris Kirk, just guys who all have holes in their game. I guess maybe Thegalia at 6,500. I mean, if you're going to go long, go really long. He's a guy who's shown he can do it under pressure. Has won a U.S. Amateur before. I mean, this is a guy who can play. So, if you're going to take it, go long. But I just don't really like anybody in that sandwich middle. I'm either going really down the board this week or I'm just going to cover a lot at the top.
Anyone you can be talked into, Jeff?
Yeah, I mentioned Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk has played really, really consistent golf. You worry about like his ability to go super low, but his last win was actually on the Corn Ferry Tour, like minus 25. So, maybe I shouldn't be saying that. I think that the easier golf course probably gives Chris Kirk a better chance to win. He has competed well at tougher golf courses this year, but I think realistically, like these are the kind of tracks you'd expect Chris Kirk to grab a win at. So plus 5,000 for him. I think he's played well enough to deserve that. I think that's actually a very solid number. Like you look down, Harold Varner III, he's been good too, but like, does he really deserve to be like more than half? His odds that much lower than Chris Kirk, like basically cut in half? I don't think so. So Kirk to me stands out a little bit in that range. You can make a case for Hadwin at the Canadian Open, getting a boost. We almost saw David Hearn here once this event, but I think Chris Kirk would be the target for me in that range.
How about a long shot for you, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, and this is a week where, again, like, you can definitely start going down the board. I mean, I know CT Pan at plus 8,000, a really good competitor. A guy's going to fit this course extremely well. He's just making cuts, gaining strokes on approach every week. If his putter heats up, man, I mean, like he can definitely compete on a course like this. You have to give him some respect at plus 8,000. And I'll throw out a name that I've kind of been tracking and a guy who's played really well of late. He's been hanging on tougher courses. He won on the Corn Ferry Tour last year. It's David Lipsky at plus 13,000. Again, I like this track for him. He's not a big hitter off the tee, but that does not matter this week. He can absolutely start rolling his putter in. Lipsky has shown some real flashes with the approaches. He competed on an easier track in Mexico really well, like last month. I think Lipsky at plus 13,000 is very live in this field. And like I said, He won on the Corn Ferry to a very competitive, event and similar, probably on a similar style course too. So give me Lipsky at plus 13,000. He'll probably make my card in some fashion this week.
Colin, you mentioned being at least enticed going way down the board. So who stands out?
That's the thing, is that it's really tough. You're throwing darts at this point. How about some Wyndham Clark at plus 200 to win it? Again, a guy who doesn't need to be super long, but can roll the rock a little bit. Rory Sabatini has the tendency, especially in these shorter courses, to just pop up. Look what he did in the Olympics. He can definitely, he can putt it. He can make some plays. Sometimes he'll get frustrated and he won't play his best, but he's a guy that I don't necessarily hate at plus 180. I think there's some value there. So it's a really, really tough. This is it's tough because this week I think the board's actually kind of right. So I'm looking at more plus 5 or top 5s and top 10s this week, because I think one person's going to hit. And when that person does hit to win, it's going to be somebody from the top of the board, but they're not going to pay very well. So I'd rather get some guys that are mixed in at the top 5 and top 10 level and give myself a little bit of insurance there. This board looks pretty well priced to me this week, honestly.
Guys, before I let you go, this is just my absolute favorite question in this segment. We saved the best for last. Colin, we're going to start with you here. So something we in the Boston area, many of us at DraftKings, could stand to borrow with the U.S. Open coming to town next week. The RBC Canadian Open Concert Series is going to feature Flo Rida and Maroon 5, both performing on Saturday. I consider myself an expert in this category because I have seen both of these acts perform live. But tell me, which one are you going to chase, Colin?
As I sit here in the sunny confines of South Tampa, Florida, of course I got to go with Flo Rida, the guy from the state. I mean, and first of all, Maroon 5, really? You didn't pay money for that, right? That was a comp. That was a date. You didn't pay money.
You know what it was? I was at the Super Bowl and they did the halftime show.
Oh, well, and thank you, Roger Goodell, for subjecting America to that. But no, I'm going with, you got to go with Flo Rida. Look, and the other thing, hip hop concerts like Flo Rida, guys with a couple albums, it's fun. It's 45 minutes, you're out. You know what I mean? This is not he's not going on stage like Springsteen doing 3 hours. It's going to be fun, upbeat, and you're out. So that's what I'm looking for. Give me Flo Rida minus 900, definitely over Maroon 5 for sure.
And I did misspeak. It's Flo Rida Friday, Maroon 5 Saturday. I don't think that really matters, but I'm just going to clarify for the people in case anyone's making the trip. Jeff, what do you think?
I'll go with Maroon 5 here. Flo Rida, I mean, it's just it's just too close to the state of Florida. I don't know if it's a play on words on that. I'm confused, and I don't want to choose anything that would make me affiliated with Emerson Latzia, who is probably that's probably his favorite rapper or whatever because of that. So I'm gonna go with Maroon 5. I'll take the good wholesome whatever pop music they put out. I know one Maroon 5 song. Unfortunately, I don't know any.
You may only know the name of one, but you know more than one. I guarantee it.
I don't even know the name of it, but I've heard it before. I don't know. This is a ridiculous question.
The best question? Is that
it's definitely flummoxed me. So
I think they should get Rush and the Tragically Hip, obviously. I mean, if you're going to do this correctly. It's a Canadian Open, right? I mean, come on.
Maroon 5 has plenty of good music, but the answer here, fellas, is definitely Flo Rida. Puts on a show. It's unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's not even debatable, but we debated it just for giggles. All right, we're going to let Colin go. Jeff is going to come back, talk a little hockey, because when his Edmonton Oilers are playing as well as they are, he definitely wants to weigh in. We'll come back with that coming up here on The Sweat. We are halfway home on the sweat, and it is time for our NHL Opening Face-Off. We bring back, maybe reluctantly, Jeff Ulrich, not on our part, but on his, because his Edmonton Oilers are not playing so hot. Of course, RotoWire's Paul Bruno. It's great to see both of these guys, as always. We got Tampa Bay and the New York Rangers. Game 3, obviously, was last night, guys, and the Lightning came out. They took that one convincingly, like the two-time defending champs that they are. Still trail 2-1 in the series, though, Paul. What'd you think?
Well, you may say convincingly, but it took them about 59 and a half minutes to get the advantage in that game. Ultimately, the Rangers may well rue the fact that they blew an early 2-0 lead in this series, and they let the defending champs off the mat. And you only get to do that once, I think. I think that could be viewed as the turning point in the series, the fact that the Bolts came back and they actually dominated play with a decisive shot advantage in the second half of that game.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, Tampa Bay obviously leaning on Nikita Kucherov big time, but it almost is like the perfect storm here. Like you could almost just see if you're saying, okay, well, the Rangers jumped out, they got on Tampa quick, but like now Tampa's won that close game, they've gotten over the hump, and now the Rangers have to go right back at it in Tampa Bay. It just feels like the storm is coming, So it's not looking great for the Rangers. It's weird to say because they still have home ice advantage. They're still up 2-1, but there's a very, very good chance, in my opinion, they're going to go back to New York, tied 2-2, and they're just going to get a 3-game series, which we know Tampa Bay is going to be very good. And Paul knows as a Leaf fan, Tampa Bay is pretty good in those scenarios. So this is just the Rangers got to find a way tonight, or tomorrow. They have to find a way, in my opinion, to get up 3-1, because I think if this goes 2-2, this series is it's not looking good for them.
What impresses me more than anything else, guys, and it's sort of a conversation for another day in more detail, but just the fact that, like teams in any sport aren't supposed to play this much and not show ill effects, not be tired. Like, again, the Lightning are coming off of 2 championships. There's supposed to be a Stanley Cup hangover or something like that. And here they are, obviously, in the conference finals, albeit down 2-1, but threatening to get right back there again. It's incredible. So what do the Bolts need to do ultimately here, Jeff, in game 4 to tie up this series?
I mean, I think for them, like the big thing is they got to get to Shesterkin early. Like they finally grabbed a win. Obviously, their streak was broken, but the big thing for them is if they can just rock this guy a little bit this game, I think that's really going to change the tone of the series. And I think that they were kind of on the cusp of doing it in game 3, but again, like Kucherov was all over the place, but if some of these other Tampa Bay guys get going too, like that could really crack the confidence. So it sounds very easy, but basically, what the Lightning need is just scoring from different people, like somebody down the lineup for Tampa needs to just do something just to get this thing going. And I think once that happens, there's a very good chance that it's going to lead to like an avalanche of goals. So I think Tampa just needs a little bit more help down the lineup. Kucherov, Stamkos have been fine. They've actually been pretty hard to stop for the Rangers. They've just kind of been lucky that they haven't been going off every game that the Rangers have been. So I think Tampa just needs like one of those guys just to come through with a decent effort, get things going. And, they could be well on their way.
Good pun, but we're not on the Avs yet, Moose. Paul, last thing here on this series, obviously, are you on board with what Jeff talked about? More from the role players, more balanced attack?
I just think if Tampa starts the game the way they finished the last 2 periods of game 3, they'll be just fine. Look at Shesterkin has been on out of his mind in the last 8 or 9 games. In fact, his save percentage is over 93.5% in 8 of his last 9 starts. That's an incredible streak, and it's on him to continue that to give the Rangers a chance. And so that kind of stretch, it also has to end. People talked about the 18-0 after coming off a loss for Tampa. That ended. And so this streak that Shesterkin is on could also end. They're asking a lot of him to continue at this record clip of his, and that's just to keep them in the hunt. I think anything less than that stellar effort, and Tampa may run them out of the rink.
So for the other side of the bracket here, and we'll look ahead obviously to game 4, but let's look back at game 3 between the Oilers and the Avalanche. And Paul, we'll begin with you. It seemed like anytime the Oilers came out and made a statement, the Avs punched right back. What was the key there?
Well, I think as the game wore on, the Avs just seemed to pull away a little bit, and it's shown best in the shot advantage, 43-29, when you get to the end of the 60 minutes. And I thought this was a game that Edmonton was going to dominate. And the fact that they didn't come close to doing that overall, I hate to say this with Jeff on side, but you can stick a fork in the Oilers. I think they're done and may well be swept out of the playoffs tonight.
I enjoy saying those things more with Jeff actually on the call. It's to get the live reaction. Unlike the RBC Canadian Open, Jeff, this one is actually down the street from you. What did you think of Game 3, and what does that take you into Game 4?
Yeah, I mean, it was a good start for the Oilers, but even when they had jumped out to the 1-0 advantage, I mean, like Colorado was still out chancing them, and I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, you know, if the Oilers had like bumped 50 shots in Game 3, might be able to sit here and say, well, you know, if they can grab this one, you never know. But I don't know, man. I mean, at this point, like they've got the backup in net. They still can't get it out. Like they're still getting outshot even at home. You know, basically, I think that outside of like a Mike Smith, you know, like 50 save, like out of nowhere performance here, this one is probably done, as Paul alluded to. I think that the Avalanche would very happily, you know, try and take this one from Edmonton in 4. There's at the same time, like there's a lot of pride on the Oilers, and they really do have the high end scorers. So, you know, the plus 115, looking at it and what the Oilers need to do tonight. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not quite sure where we want to go on the money line yet, but you know, if Edmonton wants to win this game, like they need Draisaitl and McDavid basically to get them, you know, like 4 or 5 goals in my opinion, because it's going to be almost impossible to limit Colorado to less than 3 at this point.
Independent of who ultimately ends up winning this game and whether the series ends, DraftKings has plenty of showdown contests available for DFS. If you had to pick one play, Jeff, doesn't even have to be the captain, just a great play here for this game tonight. Who is it?
Yeah, I mean, again, like when you're playing showdown, you got to think about how you think the game is going. And I think that if the Oilers do win, it's going to be not necessarily on the back of their goaltending. It's going to be on the back of like some kind of like multiple goal performance by Draisaitl or McDavid. You look at Leon Draisaitl. He's 13-5 in the captain spot. He's not even in like the top 5 or 6, you know, like top ranked players in the salary structure. You're getting like pretty good value to stick him up there in the captain spot tonight. He's a lot cheaper than McDavid and McKinnon, and I think he brings just as much goal scoring upside. So Leon Draisaitl for me is the guy I would choose to captain. Again, you're playing for an Oilers victory here. You're playing for like a 5-goal breakout by their team. That's fine. If you don't think that that's going to happen, then you should probably go to the Colorado side and maybe look for a guy like, you know, Mikko Rantanen or something like that at 12-9. Maybe Landeskog as well is in play. But I think Leon Draisaitl for me would be the target in showdown.
I assume, Paul, the consensus here at least is that it's going to be a stud, whichever side you're going.
I agree with that line of thinking. And while there's a strong temptation to take Nate McKinnon as your team captain in the showdown format, or maybe even Pavel Francouz if you expect Colorado to win, as I do, I go to Gabriel Landeskog. Jeff mentioned him. I'll tell you why it makes sense. To save some money there and still gain exposure to McKinnon in what should be another high-scoring affair, I'm going to have all 3 of these guys in my lineup, and I'll have at least one or 2. Probably Draisaitl is the guy I'm leaning to there. The Avs' second line has also been a contributing factor in this series, and to round out your squad, you got to get a couple of cheapies in there. So I'll fill out my roster with the addition of Arturi Lehkonen to add to the 3 points that he's contributed over the first 3 games of the series, and that'll cost me only $7,500 tonight. Let's
stay with the DraftKings Sportsbook, or go to the DraftKings Sportsbook, pardon me. We'll stay with you here, Pablo, on this game. If you're eyeing a great prop, player prop that is available to you for this game, is it maybe an Oiler goal just out of desperation, knowing they're, you know, just going to, I don't know, squeezing the stick a little bit tighter and all the different cliches you can put into an elimination game, or is there something else that jumps out at you more?
I think you got to look at the top 6 scorers on each team and pick the guy that you think is going to score. There's a couple of easy props here tonight, I think. I go to the assist prop, for instance, for Gabe Landeskog to pick up at least 1 helper to collect on a plus 125 payout there. And I don't expect the Oilers to go down without a fight, so I'll take McDavid to score a goal and pay off at plus 100.
What do you say, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Draisaitl, McDavid, I'll lean Draisaitl. Looking at his shot prop is actually something I like to do. Over 3.5 here tonight. Expecting at the very least these guys to just be a little bit more aggressive and trying to work their way to the net and getting shots towards it. I think Draisaitl at over 3.5 shots at plus 105, definitely worth a bet in this scenario. You can look down the lineup too, like in Colorado's side, sticking with the shot prop. I mean, you know, like a guy like Valerie Nichushkin has been very good, but you're getting better odds Slightly better odds to go on Landeskog as well, -170, a player we've already talked about. So maybe as more of like a player, like a parlay or something, you could add in the Landeskog prop. But at over 2.5 shots there for Landeskog, I think that's definitely worth looking at. But I like centering player props around the Oilers studs tonight too. Paul mentioned the McDavid to score a goal. I don't even mind taking like Draisaitl to score a goal and go over 3.5 shots. I think at the very least you're going to see one of these guys score. And, just in the type of scenario, I at least like going for the volume with the shots with Draisaitl, who's got a smaller shot prop than McDavid right now. So
the big question tonight, obviously, is who's going to win. Will Colorado close this thing out, Jeff? You were talking about, maybe having a little bit of an internal debate as far as the money line. I want to know what the bet is tonight. Like, I was just looking at this, okay? One DK better opted to go under. A user placed $390,000. Must be nice to have that kind of spare change. $390,000 on under 7 goals at -130. That would return around just shy of $700,000 if there are less than 7 goals in this game tonight. What's your outlook, Jeff?
This is not a series I would be super confident in taking unders in, quite frankly. But I get that the trends over the last 2 games have been towards the under, but you've got to understand like that was with Colorado, kind of just playing like more of a shutdown version. And one of those games was in Colorado too. I think that there's a very good chance you're going to see the Oilers be a lot more aggressive tonight. And if they get out with a couple goals quickly, this over could absolutely hit by like the time the second period's done. So I think that the bet tonight is actually to bet the Oilers. I know I suggested like I don't want to be a homer on the show, and that you definitely have a little bit of a debate in terms of what you're recommending. But like a +115 with the Oilers still at home, you just get teams in this scenario. We see it so many times that they just play more freewheeling. And again, that also would probably lead me more towards the over in this game than the under. So hopefully for that better that we mentioned, I'm wrong in that scenario, but I'm going to say that the Oilers are the bet here. I think that there's still a good enough team here that they just shouldn't be getting swept. And we saw them play Colorado tough down the stretch. Now they're in a scenario where the pressure's basically off because there's no expectations when you're down 3-0. I do think they grab a win tonight. And I think Colorado closes it out in 5 games.
You don't have to let me be the homer on the show, Jeff. There's only room for so many of us. Paul, what's the eye? What's the play?
I'm taking the other side. Sorry, Jeff, but I look for Colorado to end things tonight. The Oilers, to me, looked very dispirited in their post-game interviews, understanding that they blew a great opportunity to get back in this series, no doubt realizing the fact that they're down 3-0 and not too many teams have ever come back from that deficit in the history of hockey playoffs. So I just think that they look like a defeated team, and if they get down early, it's going to be a long night in Edmonton. So the start is going to be key. I say for my bet tonight, I take Colorado to win, giving up 1.5 goals on the puck line to pay out at +170.
I just hope for that better. If it hits over, it blows out over, and it's not decided late by an empty netter or something like that. It would just be to lose $400,000 on that would be crushing.
Maybe
Are we going to let these guys
kicked goal review to decide the over? That'd be a nice $390,000 swing.
I can't even imagine. Nice Moon Knight edition behind you, by the way. I like that. Looks good.
Great.
All right, we're going to let these guys go. Steve Buchanan, a little baseball talk to close us out coming up. Welcome back here on The Sweat. And as you can see, Mike Trout, it's he's one of the best players in baseball history. It's just not gone so well of late for him or his club with Boston coming to town. 11 straight losses He is 0 for his last 26, longest stretch of hitless play in Mike Trout's still relatively young career. Kind of impressive to think about, actually. But with Steve Buchanan, DK contributor, I'm Adam Kaufman. Let's do a little baseball talk to close out this show. Bukes, top plays on what is a smaller slate tonight, obviously. The people need to fill out their DFS lineups, though. It's always a priority. So you tell me, who is putting up the most points tonight?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of options to choose from tonight, despite the slate being as small as it is. There's a lot of good options to choose from. I like Bo Bichette. We like the Blue Jays overall, but Bo Bichette going against the lefty Daniel Lynch, who has really been lit up over his past few starts, giving up 12 runs over his last 3 starts, including 6 the last time out against a Guardians team that's been playing very well right now. But overall, the Blue Jays have been one of the better teams against lefties. That's also in part of because what Bo Bichette is doing as well over the past year against lefties, 396 WOBA facing them. So I think Bo Bichette on this small slate, Blue Jays overall, one of the better options to choose from.
Not a cheapy guy, so where are you going to find some value?
Yeah, there's actually a decent amount of value on this slate. If you really want to kind of go down the list here, I think a couple of names you can look at is Mark Hanna going up against the lefty Blake Snell. This has a really low over-under because of Carlos Carrasco, Blake Snell going up against each other. But you look at the numbers for Hanna against lefties, he's averaging 7.3 DraftKings fantasy points, and we've even seen him lead off at times when going against the lefty. He's primarily in the 5 to 6 spot, so we could see a bump for him up in the lineup because his numbers skew dramatically when facing a left-handed pitcher. Snell's only made 3 starts so far this season, had mixed results in that sense, but I think Canna at only 2,900 and a very, very good Mets offense, by the way, that are hitting right now. I think this is a really good spot for him. Help you save some money on this daily fantasy slate. $2,900 for Canna. That's one of the better plays to make.
We're not just paying attention to daily fantasy. We've got our friends at the DraftKings Sportsbook as well, Bukes. And you were talking about Bo Bichette before and his Blue Jays. They were the hottest team in baseball going into the weekend. Did drop 2 out of 3 to the Central leading Twins. So this next game against the Royals tonight, what's a bet you like in this game?
Yeah, so for the Blue Jays to go over their team totals, currently set at 5.5 runs. This is a pretty beefy total that they have to go over there. But I mentioned the struggles that Daniel Lynch has endured, especially as of late. As I mentioned, his last time out, 6 runs allowed against the Guardians, a team that, nobody really had any high hopes for. They're suddenly in second place in the American League Central, but going over 5.5 runs, even if they don't get it off of Daniel Lynch, that Royals bullpen has been absolutely atrocious. Not only do they have one of the highest ERAs in the league over the course of the year, just in the past week alone, they have a 5.68 ERA and have a walk rate of 6.1 over 9 innings. That is one of the highest in the league over that span. So they're putting a ton of traffic on the base pass, and now you're facing a Blue Jays team that suddenly is starting to hit, is suddenly coming alive. That's just going to lead to bad things for the Royals. So even though 5.5 runs is a very big total for this team to have to pass to get 6 runs, the way they've been hitting and the way this Royals pitching staff is pitching, if that's what you want to call it at this rate, I like them to go over 5.5 runs.
If you're a new viewer to the Sweat, I got to tell you, it would not be a segment with Steve Buchanan if there wasn't a question about the Mariners and there wasn't a question about Robbie Ray. You put those two together in the same question and just, you know what I mean? 5.5 the strikeout total on the DK Sportsbook, Bukes. How do you like that line?
Yeah, that seems pretty low right now. Now, the Astros have been one of the toughest teams in the league to strike out. Their K rate is down near 17%. That is not very high by any means, but at least since the beginning of May, Robbie Ray feels like he's starting to kind of turn it around, at least with the strikeouts. They are getting runs against him, but the strikeouts have been coming along. Since the May 10th start against the Phillies, he has struck out no less than 6 hitters in those 5 straight starts, 8 or more in 4 of those starts. So 5.5 feels like a little too low here. This number is lower than usual because of how tough the Astros are to strike out, but 5.5 feels like a number that Ray should be able to go over. As I mentioned, he's gone over this now in 5 straight starts. Even with the production that other teams are getting against him, he's still consistently going around 6 innings in these starts. So he has a good chance, I think, to go over this number. It's kind of currently at -110 to go over 5.5 strikeouts. Give me that one from my boy, Robbie Ray.
You mentioned it before. It's not a big slate, but there are some good games, including a good matchup in the National League. Two of the top teams in the league, as a matter of fact, the Mets, rather, and the Padres are matching up. Is there a line in this game you like?
Yeah, so this total is set at 7.5. I think the under is the play in this one at -115. We talked about how Snell has been having some issues, but one guy that hasn't really been having any issues is Carlos Carrasco. We saw him getting lit up on so many different occasions last year, had surgery. They helped his elbow there, and he said he feels like he has full motion of his elbow after that surgery, and it's really shown with how well he's been pitching. So I think this number is they're going to come close to hitting the over on this number at 8, but I feel like the under is the play in this one, especially with these guys going. Both of these guys have the capability to go deep into these games. So while 7.5 runs is one of the lowest totals on the board, I still think this game can go under. So give me under 7.5 runs between these two teams at -115.
Bukes, the DK Sportsbook is your oyster. You can look at any bet, slate-approved pick. What's your favorite tonight?
Yeah, the Red Sox on the run line through the first 5 innings, going against Noah Syndergaard at +0.5 a run in this one. The Red Sox have been one of the most profitable teams on the run line through the first 5 innings. They are 31-23 in that scenario. Over the last 10 games, 6-4. And tonight they're facing Syndergaard, who has really been struggling as of late. Over his last 3 starts, 10 runs allowed on 15 hits through just 11 innings pitched. And then we talk about this Angels team on this horrific losing streak that they're on, losing 11 in a row. During that span, they're averaging just 3.1 runs per game. 4 of those games, they scored 1 run or less in that span. The pitching staff is doing horrible right now. The offense is not mustering anything at the plate. So give me the Red Sox to be leading in this game through the first 5 innings with Michael Walker on the mound. You're getting that right now at +0.5 a run. I think that's one of the better plays to take tonight.
Buke, since we have an extra minute or two, and while I've got you here, the Red Sox, you were just talking about them. They've won 4 straight. I think they've outscored their opponents during that stretch, like 27-5, something like that. The starting pitching has been elite, at least through the last turn of the rotation. And this team, more notably, is back to 500 for the first time since late April. Are you buying it all, or is this just a good stretch?
You know, the Red Sox were one of the more underperforming teams when you looked at their advanced stats, like expected batting average, expected WOBA. They were miles away from what was actually being put on the field. Now things are starting to click here. The problem is they're playing in the AL East, and there's about 3 other teams that they have to combat to get back into contention here. Now, you do mention they're right there in the wild card. That's probably going to be the path for them because it's going to be hard to leap over the Rays, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees, which seems like they've already locked up this division to begin with. But I am buying that this team was much, much better than we saw during the months of late April and early May. I think this is a team that we expected more, and it's coming at a crucial time because trade deadline rumors are already starting to come up. If this team isn't in contention, they have some very valuable chips that they can move off. But if they're going to start playing like this, they're going to be in no position to be trading off those chips. So I think this is the perfect time for them to be hitting well. And the schedule that they have coming up over the next 2 weeks is very favorable. So I'm buying this team is playing well as they should have been over a month and a half ago.
Bukes, thanks for hopping on with us and everybody else who is part of this show. Just to go full circle real quick before we do leave with a little NBA. Some news from Shams Charania, of course, from Stadium and The Athletic. People thinking back to the Lakers' struggles last year and some of the names and personalities on that team, LeBron and Davis and Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony, and the list goes on and on. Well, Darvin Ham is the new head coach. We know that. He has a new assistant by the name of Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace has entered the coaching ranks. What could possibly go wrong? We got Madden Sims coming up starting at noon Eastern. It's just a few minutes away. Texans and Colts, the first one of the day. The slate comes your way after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim right around 5:15. Tune in for that. I'm Adam Kaufman. We'll talk to you again tomorrow here on The Sweat. Again, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And again, thanks to everyone who was part of this show today on camera and behind the scenes. We'll see you later.
Thanks for that pointless news.